Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Wood, and I am the Engagement Director for Moving Parts Newcastle Puppetry Festival. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're really excited to welcome you to the first event in our 2021 Talks with Practitioners series, a conversation with Laura Mathews. Laura Mathews designs and makes articulated animal sculptures and puppets. Their work focuses on bio-mimicry and creating truly convincing impressions of life, spending a huge amount of time designing each creature, studying the skeleton, muscular structures in depth. Digital fabrication allows Laura to endlessly create and refine puppets, the patterns for the puppets, without the limitations of cutting each tiny piece by hand. This allows the time and scope for developing ever more accurate and intricate work. So let's bring Laura into the session now. Welcome, Laura.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Looking forward to this.
Great. Yes, I think it's going to be a really great conversation. So, just to start, could you give a little bit of background about yourself, kind of how you arrived at doing what you do, and then maybe go into the details of exactly kind of how you see your art and your craft and how that overlaps with kind of digital fabrication, digital puppetry.
Yes. As you mentioned, I'm really interested in like anatomical structure, and I think I've come into doing it as puppetry in a slightly different way. Like it's never been about a theatrical performance. It's never been about storytelling. I'm quite a shy person. I was never a theatre kid or anything like that. But it's really about the intricacies of the puppet itself and making this creature that can live in the world, I suppose. Um, I've always been obsessed with biological mechanics. I have a very vivid memory of this blackbird that I found when I was a kid, and it was dead. And I just kept my mum had to keep hiding it, and I kept going and finding it again, and like just marveling over the wings and how the feathers like move so perfectly. And it was always just like, how does this happen? How like what's the underlying mechanism? Um, my mum's a biology teacher, so she always had the answers for my like weird, like gross little questions of like, how does that ligament work? Which was really handy. I was also obsessed with horses, and all of my toy horses, I always wanted them to like be able to articulate a lot more. They'd be quite, like head up and down. And I've got very early sketches of like my dream horse toy that I would design. That could like gallop and buck and rear and toss its head and all sorts of the flamboyant movements that horses do, and I wanted to be able to recreate with my toys. And I did have quite a few simple puppets when I was little, and I used to love them. But I think originally I probably viewed them as quite limited, with only a few strings, could only do a few movements, and I, wanted my creatures to live more than I suppose I originally thought puppets could. I don't like my education wise. I studied decorative arts at Nottingham Trent. Sadly, the course is no more, but it was a very broad making course about different techniques. So wood, metal, ceramic, like really broad, just like learning to use all different equipment and machinery and confidence with power tools and things like that. Much more so than a focus on like a conceptual like fine art course. So it was a really great course to just learn like a broad range of making things. And I was making for my degree show these articulated rats out of like scavenged materials that I got out of abandoned buildings that I was exploring at the time. And because I was wanting to make like about 50 of them, and my tutor suggested looking at laser cutting, which I'd never heard of before, because like replicating them would be so much easier. And I remember watching like the little metal head just move really confidently around the sheet, like perfect circles, perfectly straight lines, pivot holes in exactly the right place. And I was just like, it was like a light bulb went off that this is a way to make all the things that I've had in my head for so long. And I'm still prone to sitting and watching it. Like, I'll still watch the laser cutter do its thing. I've been laser cutting for about 10 years now, and there's still like a little bit of magic in this perfect line. It just cuts exactly where you want it to. So I fell in love with like not only the precision of it, but like the speed. You don't need to be so precious about materials or about time. You can just bash out a design, cut it, stick it. If it doesn't quite work, you've got a very obvious 3D model of like why it doesn't work. You can see which bits are jamming or which bits aren't quite working. So it's just really speeds up the making process and the design process as well. So I work in 2D layers, 2D slices, which are glued up together to create 3D forms. And for a number of years, I've been making like interactive like sculptures, which I always tried to stay away from the word toys. I didn't want to kind of have them seen as toys, but so I did make my dream horse design and elephants and hares and a few other creatures, but I was getting bored with the limitations of that. I feel like I'd sort of explored everything that I could in these 2D layers, and I was working at a museum, and this Dinosaurs of China exhibition was on, and it was just the most amazing exhibition with lots and lots of fossils and replica skeletons. And I had a huge amount of time just sat in the exhibition looking at the parts and how they fit together. And it was looking at the evolution of dinosaurs into birds. And so they had modern day bird skeletons as well. So this ticked all my like happy boxes. And I thought, I'm going to make a bird puppet. I'm just going to give it a go. There was no pressure of how or why or anything. And it just became this huge obsession of, just like tinkering in my head when I was at work or tinkering in the workshop. No one could get any conversation out of me for, a good long while. Getting these little bits of wood, like wobbly little bones, and working out how I could use the strings to manipulate it and really recreate flight and in all its complexity in as much depth that I could do. And the first flight in the studio brought me to tears because I was just so proud that this little creature was now alive in my hands, and it was just a really poignant moment that this little bird I've brought to life. Then the sparrow, I applied to the moving parts scratch face. So thanks, guys. I was delighted to be selected for that, and spent the weekend with like really cool puppet people, and the sparrow had a really great response. It was sort of perfect for an introvert because I didn't have to speak. I could just fly off anywhere if I felt uncomfortable, or fly just, I was just walking around. There was no set routine. I'd just land on people's hands and, I just got to be a bird. It was just the best. So after the sparrow, I decided I wanted to make a dragon, but because I've only got really small hands, so like the limit of the length of my fingers, it was limited how much string I could pull. And so I remembered how cool I always thought like folding umbrellas are, and they're 4-bar joints that like one small movement can create a much larger movement. And so I started recreating that with laser cutting and to make these dragon wings a lot bigger. And realizing that worked in a similar way to bones and tendons, just like ticked all my boxes again. And I could sort of work out how these things worked. So I've got a little one here. And that meant that the only distance I needed to pull was from this elbow, and I could control it all the way down the length. The next challenge was how to pilot the dragon. So it was because even though the distance was shorter, it was a much more powerful movement that was needed. So I needed to work out how my hand was going to work the dragon. And the best way that I found was to just scan my hand in to the computer, and then I can take all the measurements that I need to directly from my hand. So it could be very easily like fitted ergonomically to me. And then my latest project was the Velociraptor, who, oh yeah, that's the right side, who you can see behind me, who was a commission for a lady who does birds of prey shows, like flies, owls, and things around schools. And it was to show the evolution of dinosaurs into birds. So it's kind of gone full circle that my first there he is. My first kind of like love of like dinosaurs into birds came around in a commission. And unfortunately, due to COVID, she lost all that work. So I've ended up keeping him, and it's absolutely fine because I just love having him in the studio. he's really fun to be, and yeah, he's got like a really cool leg. If I hold it up, so I'm really pleased with this one. So it extends out, and then there's like a double reciprocal joint controlling the claw, and then there's like a strung tendon inside there, which makes it which controls the toes. So like all of this movement can just happen from just a few strings up here, and then you can walk like that. So I just love working digitally. Like I said, it's like this complete clean space that you can experiment endlessly. You don't need to worry about wasting materials. I've got old things saved, and I'm not going to mess up or overdo a design that I've been working on. And then when I get to laser cut the actual piece, it's like bringing something into reality. So like the digital world feels a bit dreamy sometimes because it's not real, and then bringing it into reality, it's like I really enjoy that process as well. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Like, there's a lot of rich ideas there. I just wanted to go into some of the details of what you were talking about, specifically around laser cutting. So you sent me this video, which gives a lovely illustration. Do you want to just talk through, if I go from the beginning here, kind of this, what the actual process is for?
Yeah, so here I'm taping down the wood into the laser cutter because it has to focus exactly on a specific height. So the wood has to be completely flat because it's like a light beam, and it has to hit the wood exactly where the light beam is focused to its narrowest and most powerful point. So I tape it all down, make sure it's all nice and flat, make sure it's all going to fit, and then press go. And I've got different colors which tell the laser to do different powers, different speeds. So here it's the lightest in grey, which just skims over the surface. And that's, for like alignment marks, or I do like a half cut down for recessed hex nuts. And then you can just dig it out. And because this specific one is ply, so you've got really good layers for digging out a nut in. And then it starts off doing all the pivot holes, so all of the details within the pieces, and those cut first because sometimes the piece just drops out slightly. So if the pivot holes are cut first, then when the outer line's done, then it's going to be in exactly the right place. If it was the other way around, you could cut the outer piece, it could fall and like slightly move. So, and then when it cuts the pivot hole, it would be in the wrong place. So yeah, there's like quite a few different layers, and yeah, like and there's an order to doing things.
Right, right, right. And it kind of comes to my other question. Are you prototyping with other materials before you kind of commit to wood? I know there's a
Yeah.
paper puppet that you have.
Yes, I've got. I use a lot of yeah. I'm sure it's birch ply, which is pretty cheap, and it cuts really nicely. And I'll do lots and lots of like tests in that. So I've got like this owl leg. Oh, which side am I on? There. So that's birch ply, and yeah, like that's just MDF. So I'll use like cheaper materials to begin with, and then like the final pieces are normally in like a hardwood. Like I really like using ash because it smells like a porridge when you carve it. And it's a really nice hardwood, but it's quite lightweight as well, so yeah, it's not just the smell.
Bro. I have a few visuals here as well of kind of your design process, and you're kind of talking about practice as a digital artist, and I'm kind of interested how that how you kind of think about that. But I've got some wonderful drawings that will just share here. Oh, not me. They're not my drawings, so I can't say about them. So this is this being done with pen and paper, or are you using kind of digital tools to assist you in this?
Yeah. So this is done. I've sort of been a bit cheeky. I've put a pen effect over the digital lines, so it looks a bit more like hand drawn. But I do initial sketches on pen and paper, and then it all becomes digital, and it's just a huge file that builds up in layers and complexity, and yeah, then this is a digital one. It's just faked to look hand drawn.
Fab. And this, so these kind of
Yeah,
drawings as well. What sort of process? What stage of the process do these come?
this is working out the like the positions for the pivots on this reciprocal joint. So the circles are kind of like tracking where the pivot's going to move around the whole like range of motion that it has. So we use a lot of circles and lines to work it all out. I'm sure there's an engineering way to work it out, but the four bars aren't normally parallel, because if it's a bit longer, then you get like a slightly more realistic movement. And it took a while to work out a method to working these out without just being trial and error. But yeah, it's circles and lines.
Great. So how for you does that practice as a digital artist? How are you a visual artist as well? How does digital practice kind of come into that? Does it can it be frustrating? Can it, or do you find it liberating? It sounds like that you kind of enjoy that way
I
of
love
working.
the process. I love being able to just get it sounds really silly, just be in the zone with my laptop, and I can spend hours and hours and hours. You know, they always say you'll get get like square eyes looking at a screen for too long, but when you're in the zone with it, it's sort of like a dreamscape or something that nothing else exists, and I'll just have. I really like listening to binaural beats. They're really great for focusing, and yeah, and I can just be in the zone digitally, and you know, there's no washing up, there's no jobs to do. It's just this lovely digital space where you can just be in it for hours, and I'll come out of it sometimes and still imagine that I can zoom in and out in like in the same way.
Right. Do you dream about
And
it?
yeah,
The
yeah.
Yeah, these weird dreams of you've been doing digital stuff for too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like if I've made a mistake, I'll try and do like command delete or control delete, and it won't work because I'm washing up, you know. Or yeah, it can be a bit obsessive, but it's yeah, definitely liberating. Um, the only frustrating thing I think is when it doesn't, when what you imagine is going to happen digitally, then in reality, with the, frustrations of gravity, it doesn't quite work in the same way. And so going back and redesigning, I go through loads and loads of designs, but it as much confidence as I can have in something, thinking, oh yeah, that'll be spot on, that'll work fine. There's always something that goes wrong when it translates into reality.
Right, right, right. It's yeah, that kind of endless prototyping, doing
Yeah,
it again. But I guess you can kind of put things through the laser cutter again. It's
yeah, yeah,
easily kind of rectified. Um, I just wanted to go through some of your puppets kind of specifically. You talked about the sparrow here. So let's just get the sparrow up. So this was your first. Am I right in thinking this was like your first puppet?
yeah, yeah.
So
And it was just an experiment, and it was the first time I'd done any wood carving as well. So it's why he looks a little bit skeletal and weird. But yeah, it was the
wow.
flight that I was really wanting to recreate. And so yeah, you can see the strings go right to the tips of the wing. So
Uh-huh.
the length of the wing was dependent on the length of my finger. So it's like we're the same animal.
I mean, it's so unique as a marionette. It's I remember seeing it the first time at the Moving Parts Scratch Space at Beverley Puppet Festival, and it's yeah, it's like no controller that I'd kind of ever seen before, and kind of joints that were uh, kind of so different. Was that all through kind of experimentation, or did you
Yeah,
kind of look at
absolutely.
puppetry, other puppets, or how did that go for you?
Well, I had simple, like the crossbar puppets as a kid, which I loved playing with. So I knew that like you could manipulate things with a hand, but I think the only other other one that I'd really looked into that was super complex was I can't remember his name, but it's like a monkey rod puppet, and the movements are incredible. It could do like so much, and so I thought like there are possibilities here of using, because this one does have a rod in the back, so I don't know if it's technically a rod puppet or a string puppet. I don't know what the rules are, but yeah, being able to stabilize something with a rod and then strings moving around it um, just worked really well.
Yeah, that's brilliant because it reminds me of the. I wish I had one right, but the Dutch style of puppetry. Is it Dutch or Prague? That they have those rods in them. So
Oh
it's
right,
interesting to see kind of these traditions of puppetry that are kind of coming through your work, but you kind of discovered those
accidentally.
accidentally. So could we talk like how were there kind of lesson? Which was the next one? Was the dragon?
The
Um,
dragon, yeah.
yeah. What was the? Were there any lessons that came from that sparrow puppet moving to the dragon puppet?
Yeah, like that you need a stronger hand for a bigger movement. The the sparrow is controlled, like the wings go up with my thumb, but the dragon, that was so difficult to pull the wings in, and so I had to turn it around so that like that became the wings pulling in, because then you've got much more like strength and muscles behind that movement than you have with that. So the actual like redesigning of the hand control took longer than it took to make the wings, because I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know if it was going to work, and then tweaking where the like the point that it pulls in on the elbow, like that needed to be as far away as possible. God, you can't see. Hang on. It needed to be as far away as possible to get enough power to pull the whole wing in, but it also couldn't be that much longer because of the length of my fingers and how far I could pull the string. So there was a lot of faffing.
No, that's brilliant. I remember Basil Twist talking about when you make puppets for yourself and thinking about the size of your hands and kind of designing stuff for yourself. So, yeah, super interesting. We have a question from Facebook. If you do have any questions for Laura, now is your chance. We've got a couple more minutes with her, so please do send them through. And this is from Bailyn Wheatman on Facebook. Just watch the Little Sparrow film on Laura's site. It's completely stunning. Is it CAD software that you use to design your pieces or a 3D package?
I use Adobe Illustrator. I've used it since university, and it's like a language that I speak, and I really like it. So I don't do the designing in 3D layers. I do it in 2D layers because Illustrator is just like a flat drafting package. There is also Inkscape because Adobe's quite expensive. I get it because I do some teaching, so I get it for like a free university subscription. But Inkscape is a very similar program, and you can do exactly the same, and it exports to laser cutting software as well. And it's basically the same thing. I've just always used Illustrator, but I have started using Rhino because I started incorporating like bits and bobs of 3D printing as well. And I really like Rhino as a 3D package as well. But yeah, I'm still just learning that.
Bro. So this image on the screen here, is this done in Illustrator? Yeah. But yes, free packages, Inkscape. You were saying about Rhino as well. I wanted to ask if people are interested in kind of getting into digital fabrication, specifically laser cutting maybe, where might they start with that?
So my absolute laser guru is Dominic from Smoke and Mirrors. He installed my very first laser cutter, and just every time I have like a wobble and like, why isn't it doing this that I expected it to do, he turns up, fixes it absolutely fine. And I'm just about to get another one off him as well, so I want a slightly bigger laser so I can do slightly bigger things, so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, he's absolutely great. Does servicing, does like sales, does like resales as well. So yeah, he's a laser cutting genius.
Brilliant. Very briefly, you talked about getting into 3D printing. Tell me about your kind of initial forays into that.
So I started working, just like doing some cover in the theatre department at university, and they had a 3D printer, and it was something that I always wanted to get into, but never had access to a 3D printer to play with. And so to help out the students, I learned how to use Rhino, so I could sort of talk to the 3D printer, and then realised that like the being able to 3D print something, because wood's got such a definite grain in it, there's a definite strength to it, like directional strength to it. And some of the pieces that I was trying to make for, I can't remember what it was, I think it was sparrow, like bigger sparrow shoulders. And being able to 3D print it meant I could make smaller things that weren't quite so fragile because they didn't have a grain like the wood does. So you've got a slight grain if you're doing like filament printing, but you can kind of alter it to which direction you need it to be strong in. And then I do resin printing as well, which is flat layers, and that's also really strong. But I then realized that you can do it's like 3D printing and do a design and then have it cast in metal. So for I recently made a barn owl, and I had a small 3D design which I had cast in brass, and it's just a beautiful little tiny little detail, but it allows the wings to function really nicely. And yeah, there's a huge scope there, and it's definitely something I'm looking to include in my work in the future.
Brilliant. I think we're running slightly short on time. The only thing I was going to say is, are you able to show some of the puppets behind you?
Yeah, sure. I'll get the... What have you not seen? Do you want to see the dragon? Okay, look.
So also you can support Laura on her Patreon, and I'll be giving you the link to that in a moment. But you get all sorts of kind of extra content if you join her on there. But now we're going to have a little bit of live puppetry.
So that's the wings. My like finger pulls in the wing from the elbow, and then my other hand opens the wing, and we fly.
That's amazing.
Meow. And then I've got fingers controlling the feet forwards and back.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. That's so nice. So can you hear me, by the way? Because you're
Yes, I can. Yes.
Unplugged your headphones. Do you study skeletons of animals? And do you have any or like visits to museums or things like that?
Yeah. Like there's so much. There's a huge resource online of X-rays and just images of skeletons. But yeah, like a 3D, being able to see it in 3D really helps. So like for instance, the Dinosaurs of China exhibition, I could just stand and look at it from all different angles, and then you can understand like the 3D like element of it rather than just seeing it flat. And yeah, I'm really interested. I've like been to the Natural History Museum loads of times, and there's like a dead blackbird in the garden, like a baby blackbird, and once that's been eaten by all the bugs, I'm going to get the bones for that and study them like a weirdo.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much. Briefly say about your Patreon, where people can hear more about Laura Mathews art.
Yeah, so my Patreon is a monthly subscription, and there's my two mail out tiers are sold out. But if you wanted to join on the lowest tier, there's like just loads and loads of content. I put up files that you can download, 3D files that you can download and print, files that you can cut out, so quite a lot of different reciprocal joints. I do like exclusive content, so talking more about like in depth about how I create the joints. There is also a free pattern for everyone, so you don't have to be a member. This rabbit pattern that I did last Easter, I think it was, just to celebrate Easter. So yeah, you can download that and cut out of any material that you want, and just see how these reciprocal joints work if you wanted to do that. But yeah, that one's
just looking at this. It looks so right at the end. It's amazing how it comes together right at the end, but you can see it's the same principle of those 2D things interacting with each other to make a 3D. So that's brilliant. So whereabouts is that? Where's your Patreon?
Patreon, Patreon, I think, .com/Laura Mathews art.
That's so good. Laura, it's been amazing, and I've learned so much. So thanks so much for joining us. The first ever Talks with Practitioners online. It's been really fab. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, cheers, Laura. So, thanks so much for coming along today, and I hope you enjoyed this talk with Laura. And if you did, Please do help us cover the costs of running our event. Moving Parts Festival looks quite different this year. The link to donate is movingpartsarts.com/donate, or you can click the handy donate here button if you're joining us on Crowdcast. Suggested donation for this event is £8, but please do give whatever you can afford. Every little bit counts, and we can't fund this work without your support. Thank you so much for coming along, and look forward to seeing you next time.